My guest today needs no introduction, but I'll introduce him anyways.
I always love that kind of setup.
Yes,
It's
Mr.
great.
Keith Urban. Yeah. Keith, it's
How
a
are you,
pleasure to
Rick?
have you. Pleasure to have
Thanks
you
for
on.
coming. It's great to have you here.
I'd love being here. This is fantastic. You have a new record out that
Almost.
I listened to, almost out. I was looking through some of the credits, and I noticed that Dan Huff, I saw Greg Wells on there.
Yeah.
I've heard you say this before. Some producers play golf, and other ones are musicians.
Yes. Yeah. Some do both.
Some do both.
Yeah,
Some
Vince
are
Gill,
actually good.
Vince Gill are great. Is both.
That's right.
Yeah.
What does a producer do at this point in your career?
I always think number one, arranging, because it's kind of a lost art. And Dan's is a master arranger. I think for me, just a sounding board to help me stay on track, help me keep the good ideas that I was about to get rid of, and help me maybe look for something else if I think I've got it and that person goes, there might be some other things to explore. Yeah, and a motivator, I think, too.
How many songs will you go through before you start a record? Will you have to pick from, typically?
Well, this record actually started as another record called 615 that I was going to do with this kind of theme of just doing everything in the 615, so everything Nashville-centric, you know. Yeah. And what I thought was going to be sort of a framework to keep me focused became something that was a bit linear. And that's just my own experience with it. You know, I like to color outside the lines, and having any kind of framework turned out to be not a good idea for me. So
when you work with someone like Dan, who's a great guitar player.
Yeah, amazing guitar player.
How has his process changed with you over the years? You started working with him, what, 99, something like that, or a long time ago?
I think between the two of us, since we started working together, I got tighter and he got looser.
Okay. When you say looser, you meaning he accepts...
I think he'd say the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. He was very, very this
Yeah.
when we met, and I was just very this when we met. And I think we've flipped a little bit in a really good way. Yeah, that's why I love working with him, because we bring totally different things to what we do.
How do you know when a song is done? Is a song only done when the record comes out, or what? Are there songs on the new record that I've listened to that are still not done yet?
They're done. They're done for the record. When we couldn't play live,
Yeah.
I have to have that platform every night to revisit that song in a slightly different way. The fact that it can only live in one mode and one presentation was excruciating for me. I realized that. It wasn't just missing the audiences and missing all of that. It was missing the chance to revisit and reshape that song's potential every night. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I really missed that.
Tell me about the process of finishing songs, about mixing and things like that. How involved are you in these things? You're a great guitar player.
Yeah.
I know you're a phenomenal musician. So is it snare needs to come up 1 dB, or I don't think the kick drum's really hitting hard enough? Is it that kind of stuff basically that goes on?
So you know Justin
and on?
Niebank?
Yes, who's
very
amazing.
well, right? And
yes.
So Justin has some great wisdoms that have stayed with me over the years, and he always simplifies things beautifully.
Yeah.
So I hear him in the back of my head a lot of the times, even if I'm working with someone like Sean Moffat, who mixed most of the record. I would hear Justin in the background of my head as I'm going, a little more kick, a little more this and that. What do you think, Justin? In my head, this is in my head. What do you think? Justin would go, I don't know, I like the song. And it would be this great leveling thing of, you can keep screwing around with it as much as you like, but yeah, I like the song. Yeah, that's good too, I like the song. And the flip of that, of course, is, I don't know, yeah, I just don't like the song. Yeah, I just don't like the song. Well, maybe a little more 1K on the, yeah, I still don't like the song. So there's something wonderfully simple about if you like the song and the song's got spirit, you can tweak and tinker away and everything. But back in the day, if you're in a pickup truck and you've only got an AM radio and you're on a long drive and a song comes on that you love and you've got your mono speaker and you're just barely on the frequency and you're hanging in there and you're like, I love this song. What do you love about this thing that's barely audible and scratchy? And it must be the spirit. So as long as the spirit's there, the rest is whatever.
How do you test the mix? What's the ultimate thing that where you're like, okay, I know this is good? Do you ever listen on a phone?
Oh, listen on everything. But then you end up just like in the vortex.
Yeah.
Sounds great here, but not here.
Yeah.
Sounds good here, but not here. And you're like, the master sounds good here, but doesn't sound good here. The unmastered one sounds better here. And then you're just like, it's a nightmare.
Okay, do you go to the mastering sessions too? Of course you do, right?
Yeah. We flew to New York and mastered and did the whole thing there and then scrapped that whole thing and went somewhere else and whatever.
That happens all the time though, probably, right?
For me it does, yeah. I think a lot of my frustration is born of the fact that I can only hear something for what it isn't. I can't hear it for what it is.
Right.
You can, because you don't know what I was going for.
Right.
So you're the only person out of the two of us that gets to actually hear this thing when I hit play. You actually get to hear it for what it is. I hear everything it isn't, which isn't right or wrong. It's just not what I was going for. So I'm stuck in this place of, well, that's not right, that's not right, that's not right, that's not right. And you're like, it sounds good to me. I'm like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, so it's crazy, isn't it? And I think that's why the only time I get to hear a song really for what it is years and years later. If it spontaneously comes on the radio one time, which has happened to me, and I'm like, why do people like this song? And I turn it up and listen to it, and I've long forgotten what I was trying to do. I go, she sounds pretty good.
Have you long forgotten what you didn't like about the song, or no?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like I've lost, my objectivity is back. And I can just enjoy it for what it is. Yeah.
When did you move to Nashville? Like 89, something like that?
Well, 89 was my first trip.
Okay.
And then sort of around 91, 92, I started moving in.
So 89, that's like, Garth was starting, Garth Brooks, Clint Black, Brooks and Dunn.
Yeah.
Alan Jackson. I mean, there was a very different, totally different style of music, of country music back then.
Yeah.
And what was your music like back then?
Ill-suited for the whole landscape.
Okay.
Yeah. There was a wonderful A&R woman from RCA called Mary Martin, who only just recently passed away. I came with my manager from Australia with a really shitty demo that I thought was kick-ass.
Of course.
Yeah, it's like, check this out. It's terrible. But there's a couple of people listened to it, and one of them was Mary Martin, and she was the only person that wrote me. After everybody I got to meet and play, but went back to Australia and I'm like, wait for this phone to start ringing. It's just dead silent, nothing. And I got this wonderful letter from her that said, I'm paraphrasing it a bit, but she basically said, I listened to Keith's original songs and I enjoyed his tender thoughts. Unfortunately, radio is in a very traditional period right now, and his music doesn't suit that, but I hope you can find a good home in Nashville.
Wow, that's nice.
It was the perfect thing
to
basically say, you've got a bit of potential.
Yeah.
Your timing is completely bad for whatever you're trying to do, but get here and get going and learn your craft,
so
which is exactly what I did.
When did you actually then move here
92.
Permanently? 92?
Yeah.
And then you got signed, what, like late 90s or so?
Mid-90s, we got this development deal with Warner Brothers. At the time, it was like
a band thing, wasn't it? Did you do it with a couple other people or something like that?
Yes, I always had a band, because I'm a guitar player. We always have a band.
Always
have
had a
band. They weren't studio players, so Warner Brothers had me in the studio with pro players, pro producers, and it just sounded terrible.
Tell me why.
I was always sitting on the track and not in the track. I couldn't get in the track. It would just be sitting on the top of it like a karaoke singer.
Okay.
Like this great backing, and then some dude sitting on the top of it. It's like, one of these things is not like the other. And I couldn't get in there.
Yeah.
It just sat weirdly up here, not making any sense. And so we'd try different producers, different session players, different that, and nothing worked. And I said, can I try my band? And then they came in, and it just sounded like me.
Yeah.
And that was how that started.
I'd like to take a second to talk to you about this channel. Believe it or not, 57% of the people that watch here regularly are not subscribed. So I would encourage you to hit the subscribe button now. This will help me get even more of my dream guests in the future. Thank you. There was a time that things changed. I was coming up here a lot in 2013, 2014. I went to a lot of demo sessions and things like that, and I was observing what was going on. And then I noticed that a little bit after that, it became kind of the producer-centric thing, where producers would come in. You may not have as many session players. There would be more programming for tracks and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about the evolution from, let's say, 2000 in your career to 2014, 2015?
Yeah, the funny part was I always loved using drum machines, and I wrote a lot of songs on drum machine and banjo. Somebody Like You and Better Life and all these early hits that I had were all drum machine.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, the very first solo single I had, it's a song called It's a Love Thing.
Yes.
Actually starts with a drum loop and a flailing sort of acoustic riff, and that was it. I loved the Toy Matinee record when it came out in the 90s, and I love the sort of in-your-face sounds on that record, and I think that's always been part of my attack sonically. That acoustic stuff is definitely born of the influence of that, and probably Owner of a Lonely Heart, which is another in-your-face record, you know, that just grabs your attention.
Give me 3 records that you think are perfectly recorded records, other people's records that you say, this is it. I mean, this sounds phenomenal.
Steely Dan.
Yeah?
Asia, probably.
Yeah.
I just rediscovered Robert Palmer's Sneak and Sally Through the Alley, which has got the meters on it. It's got some Lowell George in there.
Yeah.
It's got, I think they're called New York Rhythm Section or somebody with like Purdy on drums and like the most amazing. It's so many records. So many records. I'm good mates with Waddy Wachtel, and I was texting him yesterday because I was rediscovering some of the Warren Zevon stuff, and I was listening to Lawyers, Guns and Money.
Yes.
Just such a great, well-recorded, well-played record. I was asking him, tell me a bit about why that sounds so good, and he said, well, Greg Ladagny, the engineer?
Yes.
Engineered it. It's great engineering. And I said, yeah, you know, back when engineering, as you know, is like, well, before you go hit the EQ, maybe move the mic.
Right.
Like, what a concept. And what he said, he had this acoustic guitar. He won't mind me telling this story. He said he had this great acoustic guitar, but it sounded a bit sort of tubby and weird. But when you sat and played it, it sounded amazing. And he said, and the engineer came in and mic'd it up, and he goes, this sounds like shit. And Waddy goes, well, sounds good where I am. And so the engineer put the mics here and here, right where Waddy's ears were, and it sounded great. And they've sort of done that ever since. Just wherever it sounds good, put the mics there, no matter where that is.
When you're looking for something, as far as you're writing something, or you're trying to come up with a guitar solo or something for a song, how important is the sound? Is it everything?
Yeah, definitely.
Like as soon as you turned on this amp, you're like, oh, it got a little bit too much bottom end.
Right.
Like immediately with whatever you were playing.
Well, this room's funky as well. So, yeah, there's a certain inspiration that comes from it. It doesn't have to be expensive. That's the other thing. People are like, you can pick up a $20 guitar and just at some pawn shop and just play a riff you've never played before. I'm never chasing tone. I'm not a tone chaser. I'm an inspiration pursuer. It's very different. It's very different.
Explain the two. I love this.
Well, I think chasing tone feels like you're never going to catch it. You're just endlessly in running after something.
Is it comparative? Is that why? Because you're trying to find something in your head that you're trying to match?
Yeah, and I guess it's the same thing, but it sounds a bit negative to say tone chasing.
Yes.
It's like, I don't want to chase after anything. I do want to be inspired by something, you know. And sometimes that's just going full circle. We've all had that happen, right? You're like, got a guitar in your collection you haven't played in 15 years, and one day you pull it out and play it because it's the only one there, and you go, I love this thing. Why don't I play this more often? You know, happens to me all the time.
I saw you play at the Billy Gibbons Troubadour event at BMI. It was like last September.
Yeah.
You played 3 songs or so, and you played. Was it a 58 Les Paul?
Yeah.
And you played through a Magnatone amp, and you sounded phenomenal.
Thank you.
I mean, amazing.
It's terrifying playing in front of Billy Gibbons.
He's
the Rev.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that like a personal guitar that is kind of like your go-to thing? Does that stay at your house and you play that a lot?
Yeah, it's is that it here? Is that the 52? No, that's it. Yeah, that's it. So I bought this at Guitar Center in their vintage room in the late 2000s.
Okay.
And it's just one of those things, I just fell in love with it. It's a 58. It just had the mojo, that's all. And then it went through the flood that we had here in 2010, which is where all this damage happened around here. But for some reason it came out, and a lot of this stuff started chipping away post-flood. But it came out of that thing sounding exactly the same as it did. It was kind of crazy. The work that Joe Glazer and those guys did, and my guitar tech Chris Mellon doing so much restoration work to draw everything out and put it all back together. It's remarkable how everything survived the way it did. The old guitars fared better than the new ones.
I was talking with your tech Chris earlier about this, about the flood, and how much. And I had heard at the time that I had heard different people's gear was really, really damaged.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's amazing to see things that have been restored from them.
Yeah. I was starting an album on the Monday, and this rain started coming down on the Friday. Well, I don't know what day it was. I think it was a Friday or something. I was out of town, had all my gear stored at Soundcheck, which is right by the river.
Keith, if you had started the record a week earlier, would the gear have been out of there?
Yeah. Yeah, at a high and dry studio. But the story gets worse. You got your gear stored at some place like Soundcheck, whatever, and you've got shelves and everything. Yeah. And so because I was going to start my record on the Monday, I had all my guitars brought down off the shelves, the amps, everything, put on the floor, ready to load into the truck when the truck got there on Monday. So all the valuable, good, qualitative stuff was all down on the floor. And I remember, calling Chris and saying, well, I mean, as horrendous as this flood is, at least, because you have lots of guitars that you don't know what to do with.
Yeah.
They've fallen into the weird pile.
Yeah.
Sort of, they've got sentimental value, but you can't sell them and you can't, whatever, and various things. You accumulate all this stuff. And I said, well, at least now we don't have to worry about how to get rid of all that stuff. And he goes, oh no, that was all up high and dry on the shelves because we never play it. So everything you don't use was up the highest, and it survived beautifully. All the good stuff was destroyed.
Oh my God, when you were waiting to see what happened, that must have been really incredibly stressful.
Excruciating, yeah. Because it was about a week maybe that the floodwaters wouldn't subside.
Yeah.
And there was power lines down, and so they just weren't letting anybody into this area.
Yeah.
So we know that our stuff is floating in the water in this warehouse every day, and we can't get in there to get it and get started drying it out. So days and days of that baptism going on, and I got to start my record, and I have no guitar. So I buy a Clapton Strat off eBay.
Okay.
It shows up. I start the record with this Clapton Strat. And then I'm looking on in between while we're in the studio. I'm online looking at guitars.
This is like pre-reverb. This is eBay.
Yeah, I'm eBaying it, and I'm looking at eBay, and I find some nice guitars.
Yeah.
Only you and other guitar players might understand this. I felt like I was cheating on my guitars that were on life support in the hospital, and I'm looking at dating sites. That's what it felt like. I'm like, you never know.
Yeah.
I might have to start a new relationship. So I felt so awful getting anything new while all my babies were floating around in a river. So I got one or two guitars and that was it. I couldn't get a bunch of new stuff. I just couldn't do it.
Now you play guitar every single day, right?
Not every day. No, I like to not play for a long time and miss it.
Okay, so what kind
Do you play every day?
I play as much as I can, but it's not every day.
Why not every day though?
Because I feel like I don't come up with as good ideas.
Huh.
I feel like you got to take breaks.
Right. But that means you're only playing to come up with an idea.
I like to play stuff that I like the sound of, and if I play every day, then I end up playing playing a lot of the things I played the day before.
Got it.
So if I take a couple days off,
there you
then
go, you miss it. Yeah, that's it. That's me too.
Would you say you like to practice, or do you play to come up with ideas for songs?
Yeah, I'm not a practice guy.
Okay.
I should be. But I think it's the same thing, right? If you're playing for any reason to come up with something, I mean, it's sort of practicing, stumbling upon something. My days off, if I'm on the road and I've got days off, I'm probably just buried in YouTube, looking at rig rundowns and driving my tech crazy because I'm going to get to the gig that night and go, here's what we should do,
Okay, so let's
no sound check, no nothing, So.
All right, let's talk about some rabbit holes as far as other guitar players. You're a David Gilmour guy, right?
Yeah.
You've gone down these gear. I asked Chris.
Yeah, had the 4x12 WEM cabs, you bet. The Echo Rec, did it all.
Okay, so how do these things start, and then what do? You just kind of just keep searching, right?
Well, and here's the thing, right? I don't play like him.
Right.
I don't play like Knopfler. I don't play like Angus I don't play like any of these guys. So I know that if I get the gear they use, I'm going to sound like me.
Yes.
But in the process of that, something will happen.
Yeah.
Some little aspect of that setup will work in my rig that would never have happened without that search. So you flip 100% of this stuff in and you keep 3% of it.
Yeah.
Great, that's worth it.
Yeah.
Keep doing that. I'm not delusional to think I'm going to sound like that guy, but I'm interested in what I can take from that person that will work in my world. That's it.
I saw your Benson Echo Rec that was in the room over there, and now there's many pedals that do these things, but there's something about having the actual original piece of gear that these guys use.
Absolutely.
What is it about that?
It's the quality, and you can define that word any way you want. Sometimes it's the lack of. I mean, it's just the thing. It's that combination that makes that thing work. And that's why I always bristle when people go, oh, we've modded that. It's way better now. I don't know why they were using those tubes. I don't know why they were using that circuit board. And I'm like, that's what made it sound great. I don't know why I was using a curly guitar chord. I'm like, well, apparently makes it sound great. The shitty guitar chord. Every bit of it is relative to a particular sound happening. I will say one thing, if I'm going to buy something, then I have to get rid of something. I don't just keep
Is that your own personal rule, or is that, okay?
I heard somebody, maybe Knopfler or somebody else say at one time, that he says, I'm not a guitar collector. I've made a lot of records and I've reached for certain things because I want that sound on that song, and so now I have this Dan Electro.
Yeah.
I didn't want a Dan Electro, but I just wanted that for that one song. Then I wanted this old Gretsch for this song. And before you know it, you have all these guitars. I wasn't sort of going, no, I want this in the collection, that in the collection. I don't do that.
It's interesting, when I think about certain players that, like Brian May, for example, only used one guitar his whole career.
Only needed one.
Only needed one.
I mean, in the Telly.
And the Telly.
Crazy Little Thing Called Love. And
but
stuff like that.
Jimmy Page used very few guitars, really. Is it just because at the time they were coming up, there just weren't as many choices, and there are so many choices now?
Usually you can't afford anything else. That's number one. Like, I can afford one great guitar. I had this conversation literally with John Mayer recently. He said to me, you can tell when you hear a solo how well that guy knows that guitar. I went, that is so true.
Yeah.
Like more than the sound or whatever, more than anything, you can just tell that dude knows that guitar inside and out. And I said to him, I kind of missed that. I think I played better when I had two guitars. And I'd like to get back to a little more of just one dominating the show, which has happened recently. This Telecaster I've had forever, I've just gotten it back into the rotation, and it definitely dominates more of the
Okay,
set
so
now.
tell me about why this Telecaster.
And it's nothing fancy either. It's a 40th anniversary.
Yep.
It's 188, I think it is, 188 of 300. I bought it at Manny's in 1989. Brand new, and I just loved the look of it. I loved the feel of it. The bird's eye maple felt
beautiful.
The neck felt great. It's the nicest guitar I'd ever owned in my life. And I took it back to Australia, and I was playing it was a Squire, a black Strat Squire, which is a piece of shit. It really was. But it did the job, and it was a road dog. And I had this beautiful guitar, very expensive, and I would get it out of the case and play it in my bedroom in Australia, and then I'd be like, oh man, this is so easy to play. I wish I could take this on tour. Oh well, back under the bed, and then I'd go play my shitty Squire.
Because it was too nice,
right?
It
was too nice, like this. So at some point I'm like, maybe I should just play this one, and I took it out. And it fell off the stand, I think the first night, and got a chip somewhere on it. And I was like, all right, gloves are off. It's a road guitar. And then that was it. And I just played it forever. And it was, for a long time, it was moaning guitar. It ended up with this weird third hole.
Talk about that.
Well, I loved what Brent Mason did with the 3 pickup idea. And I was schlepping around this and my Squire for the Strat stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'd like to just take one guitar, maybe I'll put a third pickup in it, and it'll be a Strat and a Telly.
Right.
Sorry, Brent, for me that doesn't work. It's a Telly trying to be something else, but it's a Telly.
Right.
It didn't work for me. So, but what happened was, when I was going to put this middle pickup in, this is not the original pickup, when I was going to put the pickup in, I took the pickguard off and said, let's get another pick guard because I don't want to damage this one. It's got this fine tiger stripe.
It's beautiful.
Very, very fine tiger stripe thing through it, which makes it this unusual color. And whatever tech I had at the time, this is a long time ago, he's like, oh man, you can get these pick guards all day long, just cut into that one. I went, oh, okay. So I cut into it and then went, no, I don't like it, took it out. And then I said, let's get another one of these. And I couldn't find one. I was so pissed. And so I had other pick guards in here for the long time, but I missed this because it just went with the guitar.
Yes.
And so I went, oh, well, I'll just put the original back in with the hole in it. That's why it ended up like that.
Have you had this guitar refretted a few times?
Yeah, at least once or twice, Chris, yeah. Maybe twice, yeah. But otherwise, it's just kind of been everywhere and it's beat up, and at the end of the day, as Jon said, it's just the familiarity.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter about what kind of guitar it is. It's the familiarity of it. You know it inside and out.
When you're going to make a record, okay, do you have a certain palette of these particular instruments you're going to use, or is it kind of a thing like, I think this song needs this, or the song is going to be built around a part?
I think, for me, my first thought is pickups.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I've got a P90, good humbucker, good single coil, some low output pickup versus higher output pickup strats, solid body versus a hollow body. So if you just check off those things, more than things like brands or models. I don't really think about those as much as all those other tonalities.
How often do you actually have other players, as far as session players or stuff, come in and play other guitar parts? Does that happen very often?
Yeah, especially with Dan Huff.
Yeah.
The thing I've always loved with him that we do is we'll pass the guitar back and forward.
Yeah.
Because I'll be sitting there playing something and he'll go, what about you do, and he's pointing to the thing and I'm always like, just play it. And he'll play it, and there's been many times I'm like, oh my God, the wrist.
Dan's amazing.
The Huff wrist, man.
Yeah.
No one's got that wrist, that's Dan. And he has a way of doing certain things that I'm like, you got to play that. And he's like, no, it's your record. And I'm like, I just want the best sound in that moment.
When you first met Dan, did you know his playing at the time?
Yeah. I didn't want to work with him because he was a guitar player, because I was worried that he was going to make me play a certain way and wouldn't let me be me. So I didn't want to work with him because he was a great guitar player. I'm like, you're not going to push your ideas on me. It was our very first time working together was kind of funny because I'd had so many of those producers that didn't do anything.
The golfers.
Well, golfers, and also they had great engineers, great studio access, great players, great arrangers. They kind of had the team.
Yeah.
They didn't do anything. They just had a great team.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sick of these guys that don't do anything.
Right.
I can put together a great team. And I was doing Golden Road. It was my second record.
Yeah.
I'd rented out Sound Kitchen in Franklin, and I had Justin Niebank engineering.
Yep. Because
I had just done a record. He did my first one with Matt Rawlings producing, and Justin was the engineer. I'm like, we hit it off. So I'm like, he's a great engineer. Chris McHugh played on my first record, so I'm like, he's a great drummer. I'll have him again.
Yep.
Might have been Glenn Worf playing a bit of bass, Kurywchak. I had a great bunch of players. I didn't need players or an engineer or a studio. I did half the album, and then I met with Dan about working together, and I said, I've got this song called Somebody Like You, and I think maybe that would be a good first one for us to do. And Dan listened to the demo, and he goes, that's a great song. Okay, good. And I remember Dan saying, so the studio I like to work at is, and I go, no, I got the studio. He goes, okay, well, I like to use this engineer, and I go, I got the engineer, Justin Niebank. And he's like, I don't know him. And I go, you'll get to know him. What else? And he goes, well, okay, well, for the band, I like to use, and I go, I got the whole band. I already got the band. And I remember Dan going, well, then what do I do? And I go, good question. What do you do?
What did he do?
I said, I just want you to show, because I had nothing to lose. I didn't give a crap. I just said, I just want you to show up, because I want to see what you do. What on earth would you do when all of this stuff is already happening? I've already done half the album. And I kid you not, he came in that day to that studio, and we had the song ready to go. I played the demo to the band. Dan came and sat in the middle of the room with all the band everywhere. He listened to everybody playing, and he suggested a couple of changes to the snare drum for Chris, changed a bit of the bass sound, changed some of the Kurywchak stuff, and then he went and grabbed his Gretsch guitar, and he played as well. And dude, the whole room just went up. All the playing got better. I'm like, I've been playing for a week with these guys. They suddenly got better the second Huff walked in. Literally, I was amazed. I was like, this guy is the real deal. This is real. He's the real deal. Like, this whole thing just hit a whole new level. And we recorded that song pretty quickly, you know, on the floor, and it sounded so good. I was sold.
Now, did you revisit some of the other tracks then, or not?
No, because I liked them the way they were. And actually, so half the album is just me producing and half the album is me and Dan producing.
Okay.
And I like the balance of the two. My stuff is much more rough and not as pro. And I think that gave the record some of the edge and teeth that the other much more very pro stuff, You'll Think of Me and Somebody Like You, and some of those songs which were just better, more pro. The other stuff yanged the yin quite a bit, but I was sold on him. He was amazing.
Dan is not only an excellent guitar player, but he has a great ear for sounds. How involved are you in sounds as far as like guitar tones? Will you sit there for an hour and work on tones, or is this something where you like other people to do stuff, or you have to feel it in your hands, right?
Yeah, I like working quick, but sometimes sounds don't come quick, so that's a struggle for me. My tech, Chris Miller, will testify to some of that impatience to like, now, I want the sound now, you know, I'm ready to play. It's always different. I think it's always different. But yeah, getting inspired in there is everything. If you play inspired, it'll work, even with a shitty tone.
Right.
I'm a big believer in that. The inspiration is everything. Because an amazing tone, but no inspiration, I'm not interested.
I'm looking at your pedal board here. I know that's not your touring pedal board, or
No.
is that's just for what? For
Clubs,
smaller
club shows
clubs
and stuff like that. If we do anything, yeah.
Do you like to run your amp on a with less gain and then use the pedals to kind of sculpt the tone in that way?
I go back and forth on all of that. Yeah, I go back and forth on that. My biggest struggle is the sort of the diversity of sounds and styles that I'm always reaching for in a rig because of my music.
Yeah.
You know, somebody like Angus with AC/DC, that's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
you just need one sound,
Right.
and it's going to be amazing all night long. I can't necessarily do that in my world. But yeah, so I mean, but probably my default place would be an amp running at its optimum peak level before it really breaks up, and then let the pedals do the rest of it.
Okay, so if I said, Keith, you can have one amp out of all the stuff you have, what is that amp?
I do like the high-powered Tweed Twin. It's kind of the best all-rounder. I've got a couple of those legit high-powered Tweed Twins, and it's pretty hard to beat that thing.
And then the one guitar.
I guess Clarence, which is that guy.
Yeah.
Just for familiarity, but it has some. I get frustrated with the tone of it sometimes. I wish I'd bonded with a better sounding guitar. Sorry, Clarence, but it's
That's
not
so
the best
mean.
sounding Tally. It's just he knows it. He knows it. There's a there is a. This one is like a 1951 Nocaster.
Yep.
That used to belong to Tom Kiefer. This thing sounds amazing, but I don't know it as well as I know that guy. So if he sounded like this, or if he felt like him, I would have the perfect guitar.
Now, does that sound like Cinderella, though, when you're playing it?
I guess
or
when
does
Tom plays it, it does. It's an amazing guitar. Do you have a favorite, like a perfect one that just checks every box?
I have an old 57 Gibson Country and Western acoustic.
Right.
That I love. and I have a 65 SG that I love. I'm wondering about like with the 58 with your Les Paul. Those are PAFs on that, right?
Yes.
I think that was the year.
The one thing I fight is I have this kind of cack frequency in my tone that I hate.
Okay, what does that mean?
It's just this kind of barking, kind of
like a 1K kind of thing.
Yeah, just between 1 and 2, sort of in that really super obnoxious area.
Yeah.
That is kind of inherent in my playing because of the way I play, and I hate it.
Where does it come from, you think?
I don't know, but apparently when I smooth it out and get rid of it, it doesn't sound like me. So it's a love-hate thing with it, I guess. I said to Kurywchak one time, I go, really struggling to get this tone on stage, and he goes, well, he's like, what do you mean, what are you trying to get? And I'm like, just a bit more of a smoother thing. He's like who, man? Like who are your favorite players? Like who do you like, you know? I'm like, well, you know, Gilmour, Knopfler, Clapton. I'm like, the masters, I mean, Gibbons. And he goes, yeah, but the thing about them, you know, what they got in common? And I go, well, they've been playing longer. And he goes, no, man, they don't move. You run around the stage everywhere. You ain't gonna get a good tone running around everywhere.
They don't move.
Yeah, and he goes, they stay right there, man. They just stay there and they play great, they don't move. And he goes, if you want to stand there and not move, you might get a better tone, but wouldn't be you. And I'm like, hey, you're so right. I'm just running everywhere. Angus, I can't explain because he just does it all. He's just a freak of nature.
He is a freak of nature. He's got those small hands, and the sound that comes out of those hands just blows me away.
It's unbelievable.
Can I get you to play a couple things here, Keith? Like, what's your go-to lick when you first pick up your guitar?
I tend to play probably an A, because I think it's probably the bass line sonically, where and I know this guitar, so I know that that's giving me most of the area that it'll let me know the tuning, the balance, you know, the E, of course, will be everything I need to know. And then the thing about guitar playing for me is I always like playing within a song. You know, that it's reactionary to a song. Pretty much all the solos I do on my records, I do once the track's done, and then I sit in the control room and get a good tone, and then hit play. The band's already recorded, and then I just react to the track. Usually the most spontaneous approach is the way to go, and then structure starts to form, a sort of an entry point, exit point, and then just mess around with a few options. So the idea of like, I'm gonna play this on this song doesn't usually work out for me. It sounds good up in here, and then when I do it, it doesn't work for whatever reason.
If you're working with someone like Dan, that's a great player, will he sit there with you and he'll say, okay, that's cool, or are these things where you're like, no, that doesn't, I don't really dig that, I'm going for something else?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love working with him with that. And he's gotten to know me so well that I trust him, you know? Because there'll be things that I go, I can do that better. And then you go, well, you do it better, but it wasn't inspired, right? And now you know it, and it's lost its spark.
People are talking about things, AI and all these things that are happening now with music, and there will always be a place for live playing, right? You agree with that?
Yeah. I hope that humans still want to be moved by other humans. I hope there's skill sets that only humans can do, because it has some other aspects to it that only we can do, like an echo rec.
Right.
There's only that. You can clone it, you can do another version of it, you can copy it to the most perfect nth degree, but it's not it.
It's hard to tell if kids are moved by music in the same way they were a generation ago, because of being so inundated with social media and using their phones and things like that. The ability to concentrate on music and have that same experience that we had growing up with music. Do you have thoughts on that?
It's all relative to each generation. When I was playing the Robert Palmer record in the bus the other night, Terence, my drummer, is from Memphis, and he loves Bernard Purdie. I said, do you know this record? And he goes, I don't. So we hit play, and the last song goes for like 12 minutes or something, and you can tell it's just a band in the zone. It's not like a hit song, it's just a band in the zone. It's the last song on the album. It's phenomenal. And you can tell they're just they're just jamming, and they're in the zone, and they're all listening to each other, feeling each other, listening. And I said, you know what this sounds like? It sounds like guys that don't have cell phones in the studio or anywhere in their life. Yes. So they're not expecting a call.
Right.
They're just playing.
They're just
and they're
playing.
so in it. You can feel it, you hear it. It's unbelievable. For me, the biggest danger right now is self-awareness, because it's the death of pure art. The way that I always define art, which is pure expression. It's a participant. But now the observer has become dominant, and we're sort of observing what we're doing while we're doing it too much, and we're questioning it while we're doing it.
Yeah.
Instead of just doing it. You know, we were like, well, what will people think? Who gives a shit what people think of this? Like, just do it. Just do it, and don't worry about it. But I hope that continues. I hope there's a human, deep DNA desire to just express and create and not care what people think.
I love that. That's a great place to end. Thank you so much.
Oh, I could talk to you all day.
Thank you so much for
Great
this.
questions, Rick.
For sitting with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
so much.
likewise.
It's
likewise.
amazing.
It's so good to get to hang with you a little bit.
You too.
Yeah.
You too.